I want you to just assess and evaluate your day and come up with a number of how many hours a day you are sitting. Okay? And sitting can include at work, obviously, at your desk, but also any commute time, which maybe some of us aren't commuting as much right now. Sitting can include anytime you're in the car, anytime you are in front of media, so if you're watching TV, anytime you spend sitting, I want you to add up how much time that is. And I want you to keep that number in mind. Okay? And if you're open to sharing, which I would, love and appreciate, you're welcome to. I know there's a chat bar where you can just put your number in the chat to let us know how many hours a day you're sitting, because that's really going to be a starting point for you. So that as you start to design your workstation and your day, where starting point is and where you want to get to. Okay, because I'm going to share a couple gold numbers with you as we go along. So you're going to want to know what that starting point is. Okay, so let's just get started here. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so when it comes to sitting, and really when it comes to anything, when we talk about lifestyle and longevity, you really got to look at your choices. Because a lot of times I use this spectrum and I look at, okay, this is health and this is disease. How many choices are moving you towards health or moving you towards disease, right? Every choice will put us into a direction. We're never at a standstill. So it's really evaluating, are your choices helping and supporting you, or are your choices harming and causing stress to your system? And of course, we're looking at this through a lens of your sitting activities today. But the question really is, with how much you're sitting, is it helping or harming your body? So that's really the question for you. So if we look at this, so we've got to really understand the difference between sitting and sedentary, okay? So because sedentary also includes sleeping, right? And sleeping is a really healthy and a good thing for you. But when they look at the typical American each day, how many hours they're spending in a sedentary activity, they're saying 21 hours of the day is sedentary. But you've got to, again, categorize what that means in terms of sedentary, right? So they assume, or the average person is getting 8 hours of sleep, right? So we take 8 hours away, so we're at 13 hours of sedentary activity during the day. And they break it down even further to look at, okay, of those hours, how much of that is sitting at work, watching TV, leisure time, being at home on the computer, and eating, right? So we're really spending a significant amount of time being sedentary during our awake hours, which can cause significant stress to our structure. Okay, so again, I'm first just showing you these details on what the numbers are telling us in terms of the average or the typical American in a day, okay? Now if we, okay, so I like this. So the time is always now, right? We can choose to make different choices in the moment right now, and choices that start to improve our lifestyle, start to move us towards health. So really you've got to make a decision. If your number, we know the average person is around 13 hours of, sedentary activity, sitting activities. If your number is 13 or your number is 9, the time is now to really identify, what you can do better and what different choices you can make to get you out of that posture, okay? So we find that what's pretty common is we are spending a lot of time sitting and sitting with media, okay? And I like this chart because it actually shows you the average daily media consumption, okay, and how much time we're spending in that consumption. So you look at the bar chart here, and we spend a pretty significant amount of time, that dark pink at the bottom, pretty significant amount of time in front of a TV, okay? The next is internet. How much time are we spending surfing the web, just being on the internet? This can include any phone time, iPad time, can be at a desktop. This outdoor piece, I found this to be interesting, but this is billboards. How much time are we consuming media related to billboards and outdoor media? And most of the time, this is driving time, okay? So this period of time is the amount of time we spend most of the time driving, and we're seated, okay? And we've got radio, newspaper, magazines, cinema, round out, you know, what's most common in terms of our time frame we sit with media involved. So, I mean, we get up to those 500 minutes in a day. That's 8 hours of our day, right? That is a full work day for some people. So we are spending a lot of time on media, a lot of that being television, internet, and driving time making up the bulk of it. And so, again, if you're thinking about the framework of how many hours a day you're sitting, right, it's where can I cut out those time frames of long-term sitting, or those hours of sitting, and maybe it's, you know, instead of watching, you know, TV for an hour, it's going for a walk, whatever it may be. You know, you've got to make it right for you. But understand, a lot of our sitting time, we are in front of a computer or in front of a screen. So where are we connecting? Let's go back to that. So this is another study. So the last one talked about, you know, 8 hours a day and where that media use is found. This is another study that said we're seeing, you know, Americans use electronic media 11+ hours a day, okay? And again, we're breaking down where that's showing up, and we see TV being at the top, you know, nearly 5 hours. And we've got this radio piece. I think this can also be podcasts, but we're spending nearly 3 hours. Then we've got the smartphone, internet on a desktop or a PC. Time shifted TV, I think this is, I mean, this is back in 2014, but time shifted TV is actually recorded TV. I think also Hulu, Netflix, that sort of thing. So that's what time shifted is. If we're doing any gaming, DVDs, and then we have a multimedia device, those are, you know, where the typical American is spending a lot of their hours on media, right? 11+ hours a day. And what did we say? The waking hours are, you know, on average 13 hours. Well, 13 hours a day of our waking hours are sedentary, and then 3 hours of activity, and then we're sleeping the rest of the 8 hours, right? So a lot of time spent on media. So you may be thinking about, how can I reduce my media time, right? Okay, so let's go back to, so this slide. Now we're gonna get into how sitting can impact and stress our bodies, okay? So let's go to, okay. So these are all studies that have come out, okay? What happens when we sit 9.6 hours? Actually, this is looking at 9.6 hours of sitting a day. Remember, we've heard multiple studies that show the average person on media 11 hours, or sedentary 13 hours a day. You know, we've looked at, so we're up there. But we see an extra 2 hours of sitting daily is linked to an 8% increased risk of colon cancer, okay? So we're seeing increased colon cancer. We go to the left here, okay, go here. Depending on how you're sitting and your structure while you're sitting, okay, say neck pain affects 10% of the world population. So if you don't have proper, you know, ergonomics in terms of your workstation, how you're sitting, it can impact the joints in your spine, so your neck. Also, back pain is one of the most common reasons for lost productivity. This is one of the reasons people are not going to work and seeking out healthcare professionals because they have low back pain, right? So again, if we're sitting and have poor structure, this can shift us into being predisposed to back pain. Listen to this, bottom left corner, sedentary people are 200% more likely to have heart problems, okay? Anyone know the leading cause of death in the US? Heart disease, right? And the first symptom we get is a heart attack, and it kills most people, right? So when you are sedentary, not moving your body, 200% more likely to have heart problems, okay? We go up to, again, going back to joints, musculoskeletal system, joint pain affects 30% of US adults, right? So most common reason people see healthcare professionals, low back pain. Neck pain is, affects 10% of the world, and 30% of US adults experience joint pains. And then this last one is 25% of women, 15% of men have visible varicose veins. So varicose veins, if you've ever seen them, but they're spidery, but they're veins that really stick out in the legs, can be some other areas, but typically we see it in the legs. And it indicates a circulation challenge or circulation stress. So anyway, these are just some of the starts of the stats. Let's look at how sitting affects our sleeping, okay? So finding that with less sitting, we actually have better sleep. So 6 to 8 hours of sitting, we see fairly good to very good sleep, okay? Less than 6 hours, again, fairly good to very good sleep. You get into these 8 to 10 hours of sitting, our good sleep is going down. We're seeing fairly bad, even some very bad, especially as we get into these 10 hours or more sitting, right? Sleep is really important. Sleep is when we recover. Sleep is when we're regenerating after a day's worth of work. This is where a system goes into balance, right? So when we don't and are not sleeping, it can cause stress in our waking hours, right? So when we're on our media, there's many layers of this, right? If we're on media late at night, that actually can impact our hormones and circadian rhythms. So that's a layer of stress just when we look at sitting and media consumption. So I like this quote. This quote is from Dr. James Levine. He's out of Arizona State University. And I want you to say this to yourselves, because sitting is more dangerous than smoking. It's killing more people than HIV, and is more treacherous than parachuting. It says we are sitting ourselves to death, okay? Like you in your living rooms or your workstations, I want you to say this out loud. We are sitting ourselves to death. I am sitting myself to death, okay? So the longer you're sitting, it equals death. Now I'm going to share this with you. I'll give you this handout, or I can send it to you. This is a nice handout that came out from the website Just Stand. And they did, in 2010, the American Cancer Society published in the American Journal of Epidemiology, where they followed 123,000 individuals, 69, just under 70,000 were women, and 53,500 were men. And they studied them for 13 years. And the alarming results were, now women, listen to this. Women who were inactive, right? So who were sedentary and sat over 6 hours a day were 94% more likely to die during that time period than those who were physically active and sat less than 3 hours. Women, 94% more likely to die if you're sitting 6 hours a day and sedentary. Men, you guys got it a little bit better, but men who were inactive and sat over 6 hours a day were 48% more likely to die than their standing counterparts. Okay, so I think this is a pretty alarming statistic this is where, here's the golden numbers, 6 and 3. Number one, you have to know how many hours a day are you sitting? And I'm talking about all the hours of sitting, not just at work. And your goal is 6 and 3, less than 6 hours a day and a minimum of 3 hours of activity during the day, less than 6, okay? So I'm not saying if you're at 13 hours right now, I'm not saying, oh yeah, we need to get to 6 hours tomorrow. It's going to be something you're going to transition to over time, okay? Because I did have a conversation with, okay, I did have a conversation with, you know, some folks, and they were like, you know, oh, well, I'm sitting 13 hours a day, so this is unrealistic. I could never reach this goal. You know, I'm done. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to start today with your choices on how you can get out of a seated position, because the numbers are clear. We're talking death here. We are sitting ourselves to death, and that's why they say sitting is the new smoking, because it's not good for us, okay? So I maybe jumped ahead, but people who sit 6 hours a day or more die earlier than those who sit 3 hours a day or less, are more overweight, are 47% more likely to be depressed, have higher risks of lung and endometrial cancer, in addition to 8% increase of you know, colon cancer. And let me see, is there another one? Yes. What does it say here? So even for physically active people, the risk of developing these cancers worsens with every 2 hours of increased sitting time, okay? So even if you're active, you say, oh, well, you know, yes, I sit for 8-10 hours a day, but I'm active for, you know, I'm a pretty active person. I work out in the morning, I work out at night. Guess what? It doesn't matter. The risk of these cancers worsens every 2 hours of sitting. So, you know, I will say it is worth looking at your regimen, your workstation, your lifestyle, and again, dialing back to how many hours a day are you sitting and slowly chipping away at that. Another, I wrote this down, another 2011 study out of the Journal of Preventive Medicine stated that prolonged sitting associated with increased risk of 34 chronic diseases. That include diabetes, obesity, cancer, so we've mentioned cancer, heart disease. 34 chronic diseases, right? And this is just sitting. So here we go. How is our longevity impacted by our lifestyle choices? Increased sitting leads to cancer, heart disease, obesity, along with, you know, 31 other chronic diseases. So something's got to change, right? I hope some of you maybe are starting to stand right now, but something's got to change because something just does. And let's jump to this next slide. Let me see, where's my, there we are. This is the big one, okay? Because again, I'll go back to people who say, oh, I work out all the time, so it's really no big deal that I'm sitting for 8 hours a day or whatever it is. This is what the research shows. Effects of long-term sitting are not reversible through exercise or other good habits. It's irreversible. So the impacts of long-term sitting, I'll have to look up, I'll get back to you on this because I want to make sure I define what they consider long-term sitting, okay? But long-term sitting are not reversible through exercise or other good habits. So here's the thing, we were all primed by the time we're 25 to have been in a state of long-term sitting. So let's just go over this. Anybody go to preschool? Anybody go to kindergarten? Anybody go to, you know, middle school, high school, college? Like, we're getting up there into some pretty stacked years of sitting for hours on end in school, right? So we all, you know, have a foundation of impacts of long-term sitting that are considered not reversible through exercise or other good habits. The only way to minimize this is to limit the time we spend sitting every day, because you can't reverse the stress that's happened. We can only do the work and slow progressive degenerative changes or change our choices moving forward. This is, I think, kind of a dire piece of research, realizing that it's not reversible. So guess what? With your 6 hours of exercise, you can't reverse your 10 hours of sitting. So again, the goal here is to move more and sit less, right? You can do that, you're doing pretty good. And that's why standing desks have really become, I think, much more prominent in the work, in work environments. It's become a bit of a problem with COVID and the pandemic, when a lot of people have been required to work from home, because home work offices are just different than work offices, right? And so that's where it is worth your money to get a standing desk. It's just worth it. Some people, I think we have the Veridesk. I think I spent $230 on the Veridesk. It becomes a problem when you have 2 or 3 monitors, and that can become a challenge in terms of proper work ergonomics and posture. We can get into that in another workshop, but investing in your workstation is going to be so important for your health and your longevity, understanding how sitting can impact your structure. I think I just added this one in. Anybody seen this? Jess actually found this. This is Emma, and she is a life-sized doll, okay, depicting what the team is are made up of health experts led by behavioral futurist William Higham, after he looked at a survey and data submitted by over 3,000 office workers in France, Germany, and the UK. And they said that this is what the average office worker in the UK could look like in 20 years if changes aren't made to the workplace environment. She's not looking so good, is she? Percentages of UK office workers who said they already suffer from sore eyes, that's 50%, sore backs, 48%, headaches, 48%, as a direct result of their work environment, informed the design of the sickly Emma, who also suffers from stress-related eczema, excess weight, and swollen limbs. If we don't majorly shake up the standard office environment, we are headed toward a future of rife with Emmas. So sometimes numbers won't really do it for us, but when we see a picture of what we could potentially be looking like, that may do it for us. So I'm going to just tell you, when you have this kind of stress on a structure, as a chiropractor, understanding biomechanics and the importance of structure and movement in a spine, this is not healthy, and this is certainly decreasing longevity and lifestyle. And again, going back to that study, over 13 years, 94% of women more likely to die if they're sitting 6 hours or more and leading a sedentary lifestyle. Men, 48%. That's the stats, right? I have this in the office for you if you want it. But this is, posted by the Independent, October 2019. Emma, poor Emma. We don't want any Emmas, right? Good for you guys who are getting adjusted and getting chiropractic care, because your posture is improved, you have better movement in your spine, and certainly we're improving that forward head posture, which is so significant in most people, which puts stress on a brainstem and a brain, and indicates a brain that is poorly adapted to their environment, especially when you're talking about COVID and a virus, right? Got really unhealthy people right now, and their ability to be more resilient to, what life is like right now is a problem. So now that you know, it is what will you do differently, right? To know is to know. To not know is just to guess. And now you know, right? The first step is awareness of how many hours a day are you sitting? Understanding that sitting is killing us, and what you can do on a daily basis to sit less and support your structure. As your chiropractor, I'm looking at support your spine, right? So how am I doing on time here? Oh, I think I'm at 6:16. So I'm a minute over, but I just want to stop sharing this screen right now and bring us full circle back. And let's see, somebody did chat in that I didn't see. Oh, 5 hours. So somebody said 5-ish hours. I love that, because what do we know? They're sitting 6 hours or less already. That's great for them. Now, at the end of the month, we're going to be talking about spinal hygiene movements and exercises. The big thing that's going to be important is how are you moving your body on a daily basis? You hear me talking about posture interruptions? People say, oh yeah, I get up every hour or every couple of hours. Gold standard is getting up every 15 minutes, okay? And it doesn't have to be going to do 3 sets of 10 push-ups. It is just interrupting the posture, right? So interrupt your posture every 15 minutes, and then you can get right back into it. It is using a physio ball or a vestibular disc like we have in the office, right? These will help support your movement, being intentional around how you're engaging your structure on a regular basis, neck, low back, mid back. You know, if you are standing or if you haven't stood at a desk for a long period of time, understand you need to transition into that. So it is 6:17 now. If you guys have questions, you're welcome to stay on, ask questions. Otherwise, I know I'm going to get kicked off in about 8 minutes. But I'm going to, you know, reach out to each one of you guys in the office and really ask, what's your takeaway? What's your hours? And what are you going to start doing to get out of your seated position? So love and appreciate you guys. Put Tuesday the 25th on your agenda, because we'll talk about specific movements that you can do that are easy in the middle of your desk day. But otherwise, I appreciate that you guys are all here. So thank you guys. Bye. Okay.